This is Wakia in the spirit of Geronimo Crazy Horse. Thought I'd add Geronimo to that mix today because we're going to talk about, and I might include that permanently. Thunder's going to wax on and wax off about warrior spirits and energies and my favorite topics that I've waxed on before, but it never gets old to me, and just it keeps coming to me, this wanting to talk about, tell stories. I'm going to tell some stories today about great warriors, since there's such a lack of them now in our society. I mean, great warriors. You know, I think about people like Goyathle, one who yawns, which was Geronimo's real name, and I think about Crazy Horse. Tosunke Witko was his real name. Actually, his real name was Gigi, the light-haired one, but people got to calling him Crazy Horse, and the reason that they did is because that was the name of his horse, or that's the that's the definition that they put on his horse. His horse was crazy. Okay, so when they talk about Crazy Horse, they'd say, you know, that guy over there whose horse is crazy, and that's how Crazy Horse got his name, Crazy Horse. His real name was Tosunke Witko, which means his horse is crazy, or Gigi. So I was thinking about where Geronimo might have got that name, one who yawns. What a great, great character, warrior. I was thinking the other day that he probably got that name because he probably sat around, and if people were talking or jabbering about anything else other than being a strong warrior, he would probably go, oh, okay, yeah, tell me about it, whatever. Because his mind was on the warrior path strongly. And I often think about the different warriors of the different tribes, like, and the different chiefs that were warriors. Chief Joseph, whose name was Thunder Rolling Down Off the Mountain. There's a whole Thunder clan lineage of people with the name Thunder, or Thunder in their name. In fact, Crazy Horse was a thunder dreamer, a heyoka, one who does things contrary to what people expect. And I think about those two. Let's take Geronimo and Crazy Horse, and I look at them equally with admiration and pride that they were indigenous people of this land, and that they had a certain mindset, and they were both very, very spiritual. Okay, they were out there where people don't even know about in this society that we live in now. They were out in the clouds. They were out with Mapia, the clouds. And I often look at Geronimo as a little bit more yang, almost like the yin and yang. You have Crazy Horse, which is a little bit more on the yin side, and Geronimo, he was basically pretty much yang oriented as far as aggressiveness, okay, and warriorship. But does that mean Crazy Horse was any less the warrior? No, he was just as much of a warrior. His ways were more subtle, okay. Crazy Horse would go out and find a mound somewhere, or a place where he could overlook the vista of the plains, or the forestry or wherever he was at that time, he would disappear for months. He would disappear for months and nobody would even know where he was. And where he was out meditating and seeking visions on these sacred mounds in the Dakota territory. And then you had Geronimo, who had his powers. See, all of these warriors had power. They weren't just warriors, they were medicine men, they were shaman, they were in that ilk, okay? Now, Geronimo got his power from Usen, and it was called the Da Gehogate, which is the power. And Lozen had this power, the woman Apache warrior, which is available to those of us who want to tap into it, and I tap into it. It's awesome, okay? It's a spirit, and when you're talking about these kind of people like Goyathle and Tusunke Witko, you are talking about a spirit, okay? That's why I say in the spirit of Crazy Horse, or in Geronimo and Crazy Horse's spirit, because that spirit is all pervading and it's with us. It just changes form, okay? And both of these guys were pretty kick-ass. They didn't take shit. They didn't take any, they didn't, I was trying to imagine the other day, here I am sitting before a computer, and I was trying to imagine interviewing Geronimo and Crazy Horse. What a laugh. Come right over here to the computer, sit down, and can I talk to you? No, I don't think that would work. So I will just channel their energy is what I'll do. Now, lots of things happen with these guys and I want to throw Sitting Bull into the mix too. Man, there's just so many warriors. I mean, if I had to pick a favorite warrior, a favorite brave. It's funny they associate that name brave with warrior, brave meaning courage. There's a severe lack of courage in our society today. You're not going to find anything like Crazy Horse or Geronimo's spirit, with exception to yours truly. Too many places. I see it in others, though. It's a spirit, okay? And you have to have that spirit. Now, there was a time, let's talk about Geronimo, and let's talk about how he was on the res from time to time, and then he just split the scene. He split the scene much like Crazy Horse split. He would just take a few people with him and go off to the hills, the Dragoon Mountains in southwest Arizona, or somewhere near the Mexican border. Speaking of the Mexican border, it brings up another warrior. Man, I just can't get enough of these warriors here and their energy. I live by it. You have the Apache Kid, who was they just called him Kid, but he was, and that's what I'm going to call him today, out of reverence, Kid. He was cut from the same cloth of these other people, but he was like a super chameleon. He was a stealth, covert person that could blend in with anybody. He could dress Navajo, he could dress like a white man, he could dress and blend in with them, and they would just think that he was Mexican or something else. Little did they know that he was a hardcore Apache. I think about some of the escapades of these people like Geronimo and Apache Kid and Crazy Horse. I think about them in today's setting a lot, and I think about their energy, which gives me strength There was a story about Geronimo and Goyatle Geronimo, who was near the San Carlos Reservation at one time. He was told to go there, and he went there, and he kind of surrendered. He surrendered a bunch of times on his own. They never really caught him. If he didn't want to be caught, they didn't catch him. He was a super guerrilla fighter. I think he just surrendered so he could come in and check shit out and see what was going on with the Reds and his people. One time that he did that, he was like kicking back and trying to be peaceful, even did a little farming, and he was out with some other people at a river in Arizona, near a river, and they were communing with their medicine man, Dreamer. Dreamer was somebody that the Bluecoats considered a threat because he, you know, the Bluecoats and the White Eyes, they were really like paranoid all the time. They were super fearful of the Apache or any native person because they knew that they had power. But anyway, I have little flashes sometimes of what went down at Cibecue, which is where the Dreamer was, and where this particular incident happened, incident at Cibecue. And like I say, the Bluecoats got wind of this Dreamer out there holding little ceremonies and stuff like that, and so they went out there and tried to arrest Dreamer. They were told to arrest Dreamer because he was an upstart and he was causing people to think in certain ways they didn't like. Kind of like today, isn't it? Excuse me. Thinking in certain ways that the powers to be don't like, that they consider a threat, that might incite the people to their true spirit of freedom, free like the wind. So they went out with the purpose of killing or arresting Dreamer, and Dreamer wouldn't have any part of it. He told them to leave, basically, get the hell out of here. You're interrupting our service. You're interrupting our spiritual meeting. So what did they do? They shot him. They ended up shooting him and then decapitating him on top of it. Okay. And Geronimo was there, and he observed the whole thing. He tried to stop it. As soon as they thought they were going to subdue Dreamer by killing him, and you can't subdue a medicine man of that stature by killing him. So his spirit, Dreamer's spirit, exploded into 1,000,000 different pieces and went out and inhabited or took over or urged on or whatever, all the braves there, Geronimo and everybody, just totally received that energy of defiance and freedom, and they all flipped out. It was called Incident at Cibecue, and they even the scouts that worked for the Bluecoats immediately turned against the Bluecoats. It was phenomenal. People don't really know what happened, but that's what happened. That's what I've been told by inside, is that when Dreamer was killed, his spirit just exploded into 1,000,000 different pieces and inhabited all these people and got them to turn on the Bluecoats. Boom. Like that. And it ended up where Geronimo took off and took a band of people with him, took a bunch of people with him, and split the scene. And Al Sieber, who was head of chief of scouts then, who also was the mentor of Apache Kid for a while, he got shot in he got wounded. Now, eventually these scouts that worked for the Bluecoats that turned against them, they got hung, okay, for their what they called treason. But they didn't get Geronimo, and he just took off. So that was an incident at Cibecue. I wanted to tell you a little bit about that incident. And they didn't catch him. He went off into the hills, Geronimo did. Excuse me. Now, that was a classic battle incident that just happened in the spur of the moment, in a flash. Now let's talk about, let's see, I love these stories. Let's talk about Crazy Horse's incident at with the Fetterman massacre. Crazy Horse was hanging around Fort Fetterman, and there was, I'm not sure if it was Fort Fetterman. Anyway, we won't get into specifics as far as fort names right now. Thunder just lets it flow. It'll come to me. But anyway, there was a fort, and it was called the Fetterman Massacre, and it could have been Captain Fetterman, I think it might have been, was in this fort, and the Lakota and Crazy Horse and a bunch of braves from that tribe were hanging out and noticing that these white eyes were coming in and trashing everything and taking over the land, and it was a flashpoint, okay, that'll go down in history. 100 in the Hand was the name of the war, or that clash, 100 in the Hand. And the reason it was called that was because this Captain Fetterman, that's what it was, Captain Fetterman, was he was racist. He was anti-red man, and he wanted to kill every red man he could. He wanted to make a name for himself. Little did he know that Crazy Horse, Tosunke Wheatgo, and a bunch of other people had a little plan for them to lure them out and take care of business, get rid of some of them. And so they waited till the wood choppers came out from the fort, and they did this kind of like mock attack where they didn't really kill everybody. I don't know if they killed anybody. Their whole purpose was to send these wood choppers back to the fort and complaining and whining and crying about how they got attacked by the Sioux. And of course, Fetterman, trying to make a name for himself, immediately got a platoon together or whatever. About 100 people, I think. That's what it was called, 100 in the Hand. And he proceeded to ask the commanding officer of the fort to go out, request permission to go out and chase the hostiles, the savages. And that's exactly what Crazy Horse and the rest of the crew wanted. They were super tacticians, trust me. And so what happened is that Fetterman received orders that he was to go out and pursue the hostiles, but not to go out beyond a certain ridge, not to go out too far, okay? And Crazy Horse probably knew of this that he would receive this command, and so they had a way pre-planned to lure them out. So Captain Fetterman went out with his troops, and they went out there after the Sioux, and they saw them off in the distance. The Sioux stayed a good distance away, but they showed themselves. So Fetterman pursued them, and they kept withdrawing further and further and further, and he pursued them farther and farther till he was getting to that point where the commanding officer said, "No, don't go beyond that point." And this is exactly the time when Crazy Horse baited him big time. He got off they were shooting at the Sioux, and he got to within shooting range, okay, and trusted in great spirit that no bullets would hit him, and they didn't. And they went zinging by his head, and he got off his horse real nonchalantly just to piss Fetterman off, and pretended like he was checking his horse's hooves or whatever. He was messing around with his horse just nonchalant, or his saddle. He was just messing around like The white eyes didn't even exist. The blue coats didn't even exist, and they were incredulous. They were going, look at that. They got so upset, Fetterman did, that he disregarded orders and ordered his men to pursue Crazy Horse, and Crazy Horse trotted off, got on his horse, and just kind of nonchalantly trotted off into this ravine. And here comes Fetterman pursuing madcap, bat out of hell, disregard all orders, we're going to get the savages. And what happened? Well, Crazy Horse led him right down the ravine where like hundreds of warriors were waiting. And they moved in like a swarm of locusts. And I think that they killed every last man in the regiment, the Fetterman. That was called the Fetterman massacre. One might have lived, I'm not sure. They might have let one live to go back and tell the commanding officer what happened. I think that was the plan. So, that's how these people worked. Okay, that's how Geronimo and Crazy Horse and all these different warriors, they had plans, they had strategic plans. Now the Apache Kid was a desperado. He was known as a bandit, an Apache bandit, an Apache bandit. Okay, that's what they would have called him back then. Desperado. Sometimes he had short hair. Sometimes he let his hair grow long. Sometimes he would wear native garb, just a loincloth. Other times he would dress up like with a Navajo hat, maybe a Navajo Bailey hat, and black coat and suit and boots, and look just like maybe a Mexican cowboy, okay, caballero, and blend right in with the people, and then just disappear as easily as he came. As much as they would like to pin every murder in Arizona on him, just like they like to do that with Geronimo, it's doubtful that he really was in a bloodthirsty mood, having killed. He killed people, but it was mainly because he was being pursued. And if you know the whole story about the Apache Kid, it was quite colorful. He was captured as a kid by some bluecoats, and Al Sieber, who was chief of scouts or head of scouts for the Army at that time. And he was an extremely good scout, Al Sieber. He was probably as good as they come, almost as good as an Apache, but Apache Kid was just a little bit better. He learned from Al, but he had his own natural instincts, and he was a renegade at heart, but he humbled himself enough to work for the scouts, to track his own people for a time. And he learned the hard way that he would be double-crossed, and he was. And they set him up for a fall. And he took a fall because he got accused of shooting Al Sieber in the foot with I think it was a .44. But he didn't really do it. One of the other people in the crowd that was at that particular incident, did it. And it was an incident where he had just come back on kind of a revenge thing. And this is one time he killed a person that had taken the life of his father. And he had just come back, and he just took a vacation from scouting to do that little deed that he had to do. It was an honor thing, okay? And it was it had to do, it was a intertribal thing, okay? Which a lot of those things happened back then, okay? Somebody would kill somebody's father or brother or son or something, and then, well, they'd have to go kill somebody in sacred retribution of. But anyway, he was innocent of the charges that they trumped up against him, the Apache Kid, and they sent him off to Alcatraz, which was just being formed and in existence at that time. And he got pardoned. I don't know how he got pardoned, but he got pardoned by the governor, and who looked at the case and decided that it was trumped up. Looked at his record as a scout and all that good shit. And so he was freed, but he spent some time in San Francisco, learned all kinds of things, probably from the locals there and the Chinese people and the women and whatever. He blended in again when he got out of prison, but then he worked his way back to Arizona, and when he got back to Arizona, the authorities there had it in their mind in Al Sieber that they were going to frame him or retry him again. And they did. And it was kind of like a fixed jury, that type of thing, bribing and all that good shit. And really the Apache Kid had done nothing other than be a victim of their hatred. So at this point, it was like, okay, I've had enough of the wide eyes. And as they were shipping him off to Yuma prison, which is the worst place you'd ever want to send an Apache, they just considered it death. They used to put him in little small caves, like with adobe caves with iron bars on them, where you could hardly move around, and there were snakes and all kinds of shit in there. And as he was being shipped off on this stagecoach with some other Apaches for other various crimes they had done, the other Apaches, that is, as they were going up a hill, they couldn't make it up a hill, and they were told to get out and push the stagecoach up the hill. And at that time, that's when there, a flashpoint happened, and one of the Apaches, forget his name, grabbed a gun. It just kind of wasted the marshal, driver of the stagecoach. One was a marshal and one was a, I don't know, an assistant. Okay, I think his name was Hunky Dory Holmes or something, some weird name like that. One guy got shot dead, and the other guy, the marshal, got shot dead, and the other guy got shot through the mouth, went out the back of his neck. He lived. And actually, Apache Kid saved his life, because the other Apaches wanted to kill him, and he said, don't waste your bullets, I think he's going to die anyway. But he was actually just trying to save the guy's life. So from that point on, the Apache Kid was hunted and hunted and hunted, and that's when he became the super chameleon, and that's where he'd appear and disappear and live in the mountains and live like a tracker and live off the land and then come into the white man's community and this and that. Some people happened upon him, he'd let them go. He'd take cattle, he'd make raids into camps and take women with him. Most of the time they went on their own accord, it seems, because none of them ever wanted to leave the kid after they were with him. Just like none of the women ever wanted to leave Goyathle or Geronimo when they were with him. They kind of had a shop till you drop type rule, the Apaches did, if they did a raid and they found a little Mexican woman they liked it, and they didn't have a wife, they just say, hey, you, over here, you're coming with me. That's how they got wives sometimes. And usually they were more than happy to stay with them. For some reason or another, they were never really put in bondage. They were captured initially, but then after they became familiar with the Apache ways and their lifestyle, nobody wanted to leave. Very few, let's put it that way. So here I am waxing on about all these warriors, you know, and how they lived in their lifestyle, and even the women warriors were strong spirits. And see, that's what I don't see today. That's what Thunder doesn't see. He doesn't see that strong spirit out there. The spirit of the brave, the spirit of the warrior, the courage up. That's what was really meant when Crazy Horse said, "Hoka hey, it is a good day to die." That was actually an exhortation to his troops or to his fellow braves that courage up. In other words, get your courage up. Forget about death. And that's much the same as the code of Bushido, okay, with the samurai. Okay, they had much in common with that kind of warriorship mentality of courage and basically looking at themselves as if they were already dead so that they wouldn't worry about whether they were going to die. Kind of a hard concept to embrace maybe, but a good one, very, very good one, a very good warrior code, okay, which shouldn't be embraced just about life in general. That's how you should view life, you know, is that each day is a gift, okay. Now, if you have that attitude like that, then you're going to enjoy life more, and you're going to enjoy every second that you have in life, because this is another gift, another day of life. And you're not going to take shit from anybody, because what can they do to you if you already consider yourself dead, or if you consider that the worst thing that could happen and you accept it, then what the hell can anybody do to you, really? So, Geronimo up, people, and Crazy Horse up. Get into that frame of mind, and it fits perfectly with what Thunder was talking about before, about reacquiring that primordial chi. Reacquiring primordial chi. That primordial instinct of the noble savage, if you will. And truly, those words might be have more meaning than you realize. Because what would somebody like Geronimo or Crazy Horse or any of those people, what use would they have for some of the rules and regulations of society? You know what they did to those kind of people that had no use for those rules? Well, they put them on reservations. But they would have done that anyway, because that was the free spirit. That was the spirit of the red man, okay? We don't take shit. We're a proud people now. Was it the kind of proud of like prideful arrogance? No, wasn't that way at all. It was proud to be a people that lived in oneness with the spirit that moves in all things. It was that kind of pride, okay? Proud to be a real person, not a fake person, not a cut out, pop out, white eyes, okay? Now, did they judge people by their skin? Am I saying that Crazy Horse and Geronimo and all those people were racist? No, I think it was just the other way around. Because, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how I reason this out. Geronimo actually met white men early on. In fact, a lot of the natives met white men early on, the White Eyes. And incidentally, they called them White Eyes. It wasn't really a derogatory term, it was just a descriptive term. Because their eyes seem to be whiter than the indigenous person's eyes, which has kind of like a coffee color to it. That's why they called them White Eyes. It could have been just as much just a descriptive term, not a derogatory term. Because there was some of the White Eyes that they held in affection, and even Geronimo met a few surveyors early on that he traded goods with and had a good time with. Shared a campfire and some coffee and maybe a good cigar or whatever. And had no problem with. It wasn't until that the White Eyes, or the European man, showed their true colors, and not all of them, but a majority of them, showed their true colors by labeling people as savage and basically treating them like they had no intelligence when they were like supremely intelligent and spiritual, both of those things. They were medicine men. They were on a spiritual path, the red road. And it just got to be that the White Eyes became a nuisance with their way of thinking, and they're overrunning the land. And that's when they began to hate the white man, because it was not so much a matter of hating a race, but hating the way that race acted. They just deduced that these assholes don't know what the hell they're doing. That's what they deduced. It's like, well, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not living in oneness with the land. They're destroying everything. They're taking our land. They're trying to tell us what to do. They have their religion that they have, but yet they try to force it on us. We don't try to force our religion on them. The whole deal, okay? Wasn't that they were bad at all. They were good people that were set upon. You see that today. That's why I say, from a tribal point of view, you don't want to come down on people like of different tribes and nations and colors and that type of thing. That's an old tactic that's used by the White Eyes, okay? To try to put people, or a description of people, or a certain image of people, or a certain vibration regarding a certain people, a race, just like they do today with the Middle Eastern people. And I won't even say Islamic, or I won't say Muslim, because that's a religion. There's a lot of Middle Eastern people that probably don't have any religion except that of spirit, and they're tribal. Let's remember, these people are tribal. They don't live the same way that others do. They have more of a tribal instinct, a tribal fashion. And so the white man is going to use this, the powers to be are going to use this as a means of fear. Make one race fear another. Now, didn't they do that with the red man? Of course they did. A savage could very well be have the same meaning as terrorist does today. Savage, not warrior, okay? not indigenous person, not person of people of the land, not tribal person, savage, savage. So let's not fall for that bullshit again with anybody. I mean, what I see should be on this earth, what Thunder sees, is tribal unity. Okay? Of all mankind, of all races, tribes, and tongues. And that's the way it should be. And even back then, it should have been that way if there were skirmishes, and sometimes skirmishes led to unity amongst tribes and an alliance, okay, a true alliance. So, that's something to think about, people. History repeating itself in many ways, and that division of like civilization from, let's say, tribal people, or let's say you don't want to think tribally, you don't want to think in a warrior type fashion, you don't want to think in a free spirit type fashion. Geronimo once said, we once were free like the wind, we roamed free like the wind. And that's the way every brave and every warrior feels, should feel. And should we all be warriors? Should we all be tapping into that indigenous spirit? I think so. That's something that we've all let go, and so we've basically become like old women. If you're not thinking in a warrior type fashion, if you're not thinking in a spiritual warrior or a physical warrior type fashion, people get all hung up with this, oh my God, warrior means killing. Well, yes, it does. It's a part of it if need be. Accept it. Can be done with reverence, you know. Not that I'm out saying that you should turn your hand against your brother. What I'm saying is that you should not let your brother turn his hand against you. And the blue coats and the white man have a history of not only turning on ethnicity, but on their own people. Let's get this straight. They will sell their own people down the river. They will use their own people. It's evident today that they are using their own people. Civilization in general, mankind in general, are being used as slaves to, just like when they tried to subjugate the Apache warrior hunter-gatherer and put him in a cornfield and make farmers out of them. Well, some of them weren't just cut out to be farmers. Did they farm and did they get their own food before the white man came? Hell yes, they did. They gathered the bounty of nature. They were into the bounty of nature. And they considered it given to them by their gods, their fire gods, their water gods, their supreme god, their great spirit, who they had much reverence for and danced around a fire for. And they had the Apache have, they have the gone dancers, and they do the fire dance for the mountain spirits. This is how people should be thinking. This is like, if you don't know this stuff, learn from Thunder. Think about these things. That's why I'm here. I talk about world affairs, and I talk about what's going on in the planet, but what you really have to realize is what's going on with you. How are you relating, and what is your relationship like with the planet? What is your relationship like with the ancestral primordial chi of the great warriors like Goyathwe and Crazy Horse and Chief Joseph and Sitting Bull, and the list goes on and on and on. Hell, there might be warriors out there that we don't even know about that were just as great as any of those. Those just happen to make a name for themselves and go down in legend. But are you a warrior? Could you go down as a legend? Or do you just fit into the mold that they try to put you in? Because if you do, you're not living life. You're not enjoying life. You're not partaking of the spirit that moves in all things. Does your heart get warmed when I talk about these stories? Does it set up a resonance? See, that's a key word that keeps coming to me, resonance. Okay. Do you resonate with some of the things I talk about? Does it resonate with you? Does it activate your spirit? Does it move your heart? Does it move your soul to realize that something has been lost along the way? Maybe. If it does, then there's hope for you. That's all I can say, is that if this resonates with you, if you like to hear these stories about people and places and incidents, then it's you can look at it as a kindred resonance to yours, to your resonance and your frequency. And you can attune to the resonance of the ancient spiritual traditions. We try to do that in the Campfire Council, which you can join by going to the link below, but I'm not out here to gain membership. It's just that a lot of people that are in the council think like I do. They reflect on some of the same things that I reflect on. Hopefully. Would be nice. So these are the kind of things you want to think about as the seasons approach. You know, I think about the seasons and all these celebrations that the Wide Eyes have instituted, like Thanksgiving and Christmas and if you only knew about the celebration of life that the indigenous people had every day, not just on certain days, all year. It was ritualistic to welcome all seasons and every day, and do a sunrise ceremony every morning. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to make this day Thanksgiving. Man, they were thankful every friggin' day. There wasn't a meal that went by where they weren't thankful and it wasn't a Thanksgiving. That's what they tried to teach the white man, only he just kind of took it and manipulated it into his own religion in his own way. And then condemned the others that, you know, that taught him this way. I mean, talk about hypocrisy, huh? So, I really want you to think about the true legendary noble warriors of the indigenous people of this land, the ones that discovered this land, the ones that propagated and populated this land way, way before the European man ever showed up. Whole civilizations, baby. Whole civilizations of a different vibe for every tribe. on this land, on this beautiful Turtle Island, which has now been renamed to America. Well, I think I got my message across today. I kind of just felt like I wanted to talk and tell some stories. I could go on and on and on here all day about the stories of the great ones. If you don't know these stories, you might want to look into a history of Crazy Horse, or a history of the Lakota people, or a history of the Apache people, or the different tribal factions and the different bands of Apaches and the different bands of warriors and the different mindsets they had, and it all revolved around freedom and being one with the spirit that moves in all things. So you just can't say, oh, I like Indians or whatever. I mean, you have to become a spiritual Indian. If you don't have the blood in you, it's okay. You could have been lived 3, 4, 5 lifetimes as an indigenous person, and you probably did. So you need to tap into that, and you need to tap into the spirit of that. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, as long as you go tribal. Tribal unity, people. And even the white eyes are a tribe. The Hopi spelled it out plain, simple, and clear. There's the white tribe, the red tribe, the black tribe, the yellow tribe, the in-between tribes of those colors, intermingling. Most people, a lot of people have indigenous blood in them and they don't even know. But again, it doesn't matter. It's where your heart is. Where is your heart? Where is your heart? It's a plain, simple question that deserves an answer. Where is your heart? Is it with a type of indigenous ethnicity that surrounds you, or maybe part of your DNA? Or should I talk to Mexicans sometimes that are half Indian and they don't even know it? I have to tell them, you know, you're half Indian, right? And they go, what? That's the consciousness of man. I mean, they're not even aware. You should get into your family tree. I don't care what it is. It could be Nordic, and it could have some deep, deep tribal roots. Everybody should get into their ancestry and tap into that. And you can tap into it in this life, and you can tap into it from the spiritual realm, like shamans do, on a daily basis. When I come up with these topics, it's not by sheer chance. It's by inspiration from spiritual ancestral forces. That lead me down a path to regenerate that energy and that feeling, okay, through my words, through my warrior words, to regenerate that feeling in all of you and myself. As I speak of these people, they become alive. You might sit around in council with the silent eaters. What's the silent eaters, you say? Well, here comes another story. The silent eaters were a society, and there were many, many societies, secret societies, amongst all tribes. And one of the secret societies was the Silent Eaters, which is a warrior society of the Sioux. which crazy horse and, excuse me, crazy horse and sitting bull, where's my water? Crazy horse and sitting bull all belong to these societies. And they would sit in council in a strange way. They were called the silent eaters because they would sit around and partake of the bounty offered to them by Mother Earth of food and game and whatever they could acquire for their meal. And they would sit around and they would eat in silence, and they would almost commune on a spiritual level. Not almost, they would commune on a spiritual level with just their energy. They were all warriors, and they were all sitting around within a tribal realm, a society within a tribal realm that were watchers or watchmen or guardians of the rest of the tribe and made decisions. And these people in this particular society were called silent eaters. Now, does that mean that they didn't say a word to each other? Well, no, because they did, and they had council, and the council was like, it wasn't a lot of chatter, it was very few words with each other regarding the well-being of their tribe and what needed to be done. And decisions were made that affected the whole group or the whole tribe, and these silent eaters were honored by the tribe. And there were many secret societies, both in Cheyenne and Sioux and the Lakota. Each tribe had its secret society. Even the Hopi had many, many secret societies regarding all kinds of things. Movement of energy, welfare of the tribe, communing with the nature spirits to provide food and rain. And so these societies were far deeper than you can even imagine. They talked about things, and they did ritual, and they summoned spirit that moves in all things, and the guardian spirits, and whatever they needed to have their visions and have their tribe be in a safe position as it moved through the realms of this reality. And all these people were very, I can't emphasize enough that it's a form of spirituality that most will never understand in a lifetime, and their relationships with their women and others in the community. Most people would not understand in a lifetime. So, in order to scratch the surface, you have to dig a little. So I hope that I have provided a little bit to you today concerning that mode of life and how free that life is, how free that kind of thought is. Whether you're in a city or wherever you're at, you can tap into it. I love telling stories, and I hope you enjoyed this little bit of nostalgia and journey into areas that you might not be familiar with. And I'll try to make you more familiar with as I move along here through this journey we call life. I'll leave it there. Jante Ishte. That means from the one eye of the heart. This is Thunder. I'm out of here.